Well, kids, here we are again. Another year, another Halloween. And another ham-fisted attempt for me to hopefully revive my channel. While I am, for some reason, in October of all times, creatively energized enough to make an attempt at same. I already did a video on Netflix's new Fall of the House of Usher, specifically a video on the question of who indeed the fuck is Verna, because Lord knows they do not make any effort to actually explain who or what she is beyond a few loose references to Crossroads deals and a few loose references to obviously Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. But to quote the Batman Beyond meme, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down? But I'm not in the business of resurrecting old business just now, at least not that particular old business. There is room in this particular video for some nostalgia, and indeed for the critiquing of it, and indeed for the critiquing the one who is supposed to do the critiquing of it. Because, as I'm sure most people were made aware by the thumbnail, yes, we are doing a video response of a sort to the Nostalgia Critic, because the Nostalgia Critic did a Nostalgia-ween video recently. That's his seasonal Halloween-themed month. He did a Nostalgia-ween video recently on my favorite Halloween movie of all time, Trick or Treat. I also am quite a big fan of Channel Awesome, or at least I am quite a big fan of that guy with the glasses, which eventually became Channel Awesome, before, of course, the change the channel phenomena and the nepotistic backstabbing and infighting that inevitably reduced something that could, at one point, almost single-handedly sustain Blip TV as an alternative to YouTube into basically a moderately sized old guard YouTube channel where the only people who the NC crosses over with anymore are his staff. People like Walter, Malcolm, and Tamra. But that's a sidebar of a different kind, and maybe there will be more of that throughout the course of this review, or this video, but suffice it to say, there was a time between about 2013 and 2015 where I really desperately wanted to be a member of that guy with the glasses, and then promptly about a year and a half later, the change the channel phenomena happened, the Juario incident happened, and well, the rest, as they say, is history, because apparently the world does not like me to have long-term goals or aspirations, because I, like Mrs. Turner in that one episode of The Fairly Odd Parents with the garden, have a tendency to kill everything I tangentially touch. And it is a bit of a shame, that, but not material to the proceedings of this particular video. And I've tried working in more background of Channel Awesome or that guy with the glasses in like 3 settings of trying to record this video, and it just is not getting done. And here we are on Halloween night, and I have other things to do. One, the inevitable movie marathoning, but also, obviously, with me being the token occultist on the YouTubes, I do have occult stuff to do. And in the spirit of doing all of that, we are getting back to the point of the Nostalgia Critic did a video on Trick or Treat. I like Channel Awesome, or that guy with the glasses. I love Trick or Treat. So you would think such a video would be a godsend, and would basically just be a mutual admiration society of simping over Trick or Treat. Unfortunately, I went in there going, yay, yay, the critic is talking about Trick or Treat. We're doing a nostalgia ween on the greatest Halloween movie of all time. And then I watched the video, and in summary, it really doesn't seem like the Nostalgia Critic understands or understood Trick or Treat. Now, mind you, it is possible that this might be one of those moments where Doug Walker, the person who is nominally the Nostalgia Critic, is playing the critic off as more of a character. That happens sometimes. The critic will think dumb things and then be proven wrong throughout the course of the review, usually by throwing in the demo reel-esque segments or bits and pieces of an otherwise editorial video that he probably would have made if he hadn't decided to throw the demo reel segments, the editorial segments, and the review portion that made him famous in the first place all into a blender and seeing what comes out. But again, not bashing on the critic any more than I absolutely need to. And this is the thing. This is the crux of this critiquing of a critic that I'm doing here. And feel free to make references to Douchey McNitpick if you like. That was a character that Doug came up with to basically hold him accountable for when he did make mistakes and catch himself doing it. But the issues I have with the critics' take on Trick or Treat don't actually extend to the kind of over-the-top, the critic being hyperbolic segments that would, in theory, denote that he's playing into the more character-esque aspects of the critic. Because here's the thing about the critic. For all that he is an over-the-top character, for all that he's an exaggerated, bitter Daffy Duck of a human being sometimes, he is also varying degrees of Doug Walker and Rob Walker's self-insert. And thus, I've seen enough of the Real Thoughts videos and the first viewing videos and the Doug Reviews videos to know, usually, nominally, when it gets down to the actual analysis portion, the critic is a bigger, more exaggerated, more flamboyant version of a mixture of Doug Walker and Rob Walker's opinions. I need to stop saying them together because they tongue-tie me. But the brothers Walker basically funnel their opinions into the critic Nostalgia. And hence, I think it is perfectly reasonable to criticize this review, not criticizing the actual jokes in the review, mind you, because that would be stupid, but criticizing the actual analytical portion of the review, because, as I'm sure many people have noticed, sometimes the critic does not do the actual analysis part very well, and it really feels like Doug Walker and or Rob Walker didn't really get the memo on what Trick or Treat is. But without further ado, that's a perfect segue into the actual review proper. The review opens fine with the critic talking about how, while there are many movies that take place during Halloween, or many horror movies that sort of take advantage of Halloween, there, up until Trick or Treat, were not that many that were actually about Halloween, the lore, the traditions, the actual metaphysics behind Halloween. And Trick or Treat was one of the first in the genre to actually do so. He even goes so far as to point out a conversation that I've had with my friend the Brainstormer of Pop Culture a couple of times, which is that for all that the Michael Myers franchise is called Halloween, it doesn't actually have much to do with Halloween. It just happens to, sometimes at least, take place on that holiday. And I'm sorry, but that's not enough of a justification to call something a Halloween movie. A Halloween movie, in my opinion, should at least, like a Christmas movie, be actually about the holiday that it's supposed to be focusing on. Enter Michael Dougherty, creating possibly the best Halloween movie ever, because he is, at least on some level, a lore fanatic. But therein lies the problem. The critic acknowledges that the lore of Halloween is in fact what makes Trick or Treat awesome on some level, but then doesn't seem to understand what that actually entails. Jumping back to me when I was actually watching this particular review of one of my favorite movies of all time, I was a bit knee-jerk angry and upset with the critic when he said that or he described Trick or Treat as passable and not smart, and he wondered aloud, why does Trick or Treat stay with him when other passable movies don't, and why does he enjoy it more than other movies he knows to be smarter? Now, again, I hear this the first time and I'm like knee jerk reacting to, how dare you say that Trick or Treat isn't smart? Did you not pay attention to the movie? But I reeled myself back in because I knew the format well enough to know that this was going to be one of those reviews that features a more editorial ish element. So I was like, okay, maybe he's setting up the question so as to then go and explain the ins and outs of the hows and whys. Sorry, I appear to have gotten a case of the hiccups all of a sudden. But so I hold my tongue, but then as he goes into his usual summation of the plot of the movie and reviewing it while he does so, because that's what he does, and I mean, hell, that's probably where I get the majority of my style when it comes to doing that. But I noticed throughout his summation that he was avoiding dealing with the actual content of the movie, and in some ways just teasing or not even teasing, like mocking and lampshading the actual substance of the movie, or even going so far as to make a kind of claim. And again, this is done in the form of jokes, so I will put an asterisk here because I don't know how much of it I'm supposed to be taking seriously. But it seemed like he went out of his way to avoid addressing the actual substance of the movie. Now, if this were another critic, you might say, well, maybe he's trying not to spoil the movie, or maybe he's trying to incentivize people to watch the movie. But that's not how the NC has worked for basically since 2007. He basically does a summarizing blow by blow of the entire movie and quips and or analyzes as he goes. But also, even allowing for Nostalgia Critic is going to Nostalgia Critic, and therefore jokes are going to joke, some of the decisions were not in the context of the jokes. They were in the context of how one would have had to edit the movie in order to draw attention to certain things. Case in point, one of the first analysis scenes in the review features the couple that opens the movie. One of whom is a superfluous, superficial bitch who doesn't really care or understand the wider intricacies about Halloween and doesn't particularly like it, and the other, her boyfriend, who does seem to have um a innocent childlike devotion to Halloween, even if he can't exactly put his finger on why Halloween is important. He knows that it is, and he is sincere in his, I guess you could say, faith in it. Um, Whereupon, superficial girlfriend is superficial, and she blows out a jack-o'-lantern and basically poo-poos the entire concept of the holiday. She minimizes the importance of Halloween by making connections to Hanukkah. I believe the line is, "It's Halloween, not Hanukkah." The implication, of course, both in her tone and in the scene, is supposed to be that she doesn't find Halloween to be that important. She's probably one of those people who's like, oh, it's just for kids. Oh, it's just silly, stupid. Oh, it's just, I, she's one of those people who I don't even think she could explain what Halloween is for or where it comes from. And so she poo poos it and is kind of a bitch about it. And it is that, on top of the blowing out of the jack o' lantern, that sort of marks her for death by the spirit of Halloween, who in this who in this movie is of course Sam Hain, or technically his name should be Samhain because Celtic pronunciation, but then we wouldn't get to call him Sam, so I get the joke. But yeah, that's what earns her the ire of Sam. Not just that she blows up the jack-o'-lantern prematurely, although obviously that didn't help, but because she is actually faced with her boyfriend giving a sincere, albeit incomplete, defense of Halloween and basically poo-pooing him. Which is why boyfriend is saved from Sam's wrath, because he excuses himself to go and watch Charlie Brown on a VHS. Mind you, this movie takes place in 2007, so it's not entirely implausible that someone would have an old VHS and or VHS player lying around. But anyway, back to analyzing the critics' thoughts on the movie, because I don't want to just do my review of Trick or Treat again like I did in my first Halloween special, I think. But he seems to focus on just the blowing out of the jack-o'-lantern and completely ignores all of the setup of why her blowing out the jack-o'-lantern in particular was going to be offensive and why her intent might have played a role in that. See, and this is the ultimate summation of something that I don't think occurred to Doug Walker as he was watching Trick or Treat, or maybe he just didn't pay close enough attention to the movie. Trick or Treat is for Halloween what A Christmas Carol is for Christmas. What a lot of movies do for Christmas. In the sense of, it's kind of a morality play. You have a character who doesn't understand or doesn't like Christmas and the forces of Christmas. In Christmas Carol, it was the three ghosts. In, in a lot of cases, it's Santa Claus, etc., and so on. Basically, chastise you for not liking the story, and we as the audience are not liking the traditions or not liking the holiday, and we as the audience are on their side. Well, Trick or Treat basically does that, but for Halloween traditions. And I think it may have gone over the NC, but obviously also Doug Walker's head, that was a thing. That this movie was trying to be basically something akin to A Christmas Carol, but for Halloween. Maybe it was slightly confusing because, of course, the ethos and, of course, the actual traditions of Halloween are different from Christmas, and therefore you don't really have the moral element necessarily involved there, because, Halloween is kind of a rebellious, irreverent holiday. It's not exactly about morality necessarily. But as we see in both the principal character, the one who also happens to be a serial killer, and in Rhonda, who is basically a Halloween superfan, both of their speeches, which the critic thinks are completely tonally inconsistent and nonsensical, I believe he constantly makes references to the idea that they won't know, the audience watching this movie won't care about those speeches, and constantly lampshades the, oh, this dialogue is so clunky, it's sort of like a report on Halloween. Why are you stopping the movie dead for this? And I hate to burst your bubble, Mr. Critic, but the reason why both I believe his name is Mr. Perkins, although it might be Mr. Simmons. I don't remember. I think it is Perkins. The reason why Mr. Perkins, while talking to the fat kid that he inevitably murders, and why Rhonda, in the course of walking to the site where the children were drowned, go on a spiel about the importance of Halloween traditions and how they used to be seen as both celebratory and protective, and now no one cares. You do realize, or maybe, and again, my supposition is maybe he doesn't realize, that this is basic. delivered in two halves, Mr. Perkins' half and Rhonda's half. That is basically the thesis of the movie. It is basically the idea that Halloween is more important than most people think. There are ancient underlying traditions and rules behind it, and it is a shame that we, as the bog standard American audience, don't pay as much reverence to those traditions as we probably should. And in this case, the embodiment of Halloween itself, namely Sam, has come to deliver an ironic justice. In a way similar to the three ghosts from A Christmas Carol or any given fairy in any given older than Grimm Brothers fairy tale. And mind you, given that Halloween is Celtic and Sam is definitely some kind of goblin fey creature, I don't think I'm off the mark there, especially not when you consider that Michael Dougherty also did a Christmas version of this with Krampus later on. And in that movie, it was also about Krampus, who in the actual folklore is less concerned with the spirit of the holiday, but in Krampus was concerned very much with the spirit of the holiday. He basically did exist to remind you these traditions are important. These traditions are there for a reason. They are protective or they are metaphysically important in their own way. And what kills me is I don't really see how Doug could have missed this, because literally every story in the anthology that is Trick or Treat revolves around. Here is someone or something that knows something about the lore of Halloween, lamenting that it is not paid nearly enough attention to, and then we see a situation where those who know the rules are benefactors of knowing those rules, and those who are flippant or dismissive or hateful towards Halloween get their goddamn comeuppance. There's even what I would call a straight up Scrooge scenario with the old curmudgeonly dude um, who we find out later was the uh, retired bus driver that got paid to drown the special needs kids. He basically is a Halloween Scrooge, and he is given several options or given several chances to engage with the material in its way. And again, you see it with the couple at the beginning. Guy loves Halloween, girl hates Halloween. Girl does not see anything but the superficial trappings of Halloween and is either confused or angry at them. Guy has a sincere love of Halloween, so he excuses himself to watch the Charlie Brown special while the girl is getting her comeuppance. Teenagers who make fun of Rhonda for being a weirdo, they basically blow off her warnings about or her lecture about what Samhain actually is and what Halloween actually is. They get their comeuppance. She is protected by her knowledge of Halloween specifically because of the jack-o'-lantern, and so on and so on. And of course, the Halloween Scrooge, probably the quintessential segment that most people remember. He's actually. This is the funny thing. You could actually make an argument as to whether or not Sam is malevolent in the way that the kind of protective aspect would be needed for, or whether it is him enforcing those traditions. Because, in a way, if you wanted to do a more two-dimensional version of this, you would have Sam go after everyone and anyone who was not under the protection of the traditions of Halloween. Anyone who did blow out or destroy a jack-o'-lantern, anyone who did fail to give out candy, and so on and so forth. But the funny thing about the way he handles Halloween Scrooge, whose name I don't really remember, is you can see it in the scene right before Sam shows up to exact Halloween's vengeance and return Halloween's order to things. He's actually given several chances to watch something Halloween related on the television. And he has to make the choice to deliberately flip through all of the Halloween related material and onto, I think it was a cooking show that he chose instead of anything Halloween related. And Sam manifests several jack-o'-lanterns on his porch, and only after he goes through the process of trying to destroy them or basically blowing them off does Sam actually get upset. And then, of course, immediately when Sam sees him do something that could vaguely qualify as trick-or-treat, or trick-or-treating, i.e., when he's given a piece of candy, he buggers off and goes away. So here's the question. We get from Mr. Perkins the idea that Halloween traditions were put in place in order to protect us from, quote, the dead and all sorts of other things. Which, by the way, Doug, and yeah, I'm using his name because the critic is the character, but Doug is the ideas from which the character is the source of the character's ideas. So they specifically edit around the line, Halloween is the one night a year when the dead and all sorts of other things roam free, just to focus on the dead. Which, given that most of the supernatural stuff in Trick or Treat are not specifically dead things, you've got the werewolves, they're not dead things. You've got Sam, who again is somewhere in the goblin slash fairy category, thus is not a dead thing. I guess you've got the ghost children, but in a way, especially because we see Sam watching Rhonda as she is walking home with her jack-o'-lantern, you could make the argument that the children are basically just Sam's tool, Sam's weapon to use. Whereas they don't really function as ghosts exactly in most of the movie. And I point all this out to point out that maybe if you weren't so busy glazing over Mr. Parkin's speech to the fat kid in the beginning of the movie, or to Rhonda's geeking out about Samhain, to her love interest that eventually ends up betraying her and therefore gets got, you would know that between those two, and actually, you know what? I think it even gets a loose mention when Halloween Scrooge is flipping through channels. There's actually a documentary that once more hammers home the point of this is the lore you should pay attention to. This is what makes Halloween important. You need to respect these traditions, or at least have some positive regard to them and some fanboyism to them, because if you are a good little boy and actually like Halloween, or at least treat it with some kind of respect, then you won't be had. But if you are a dick and deliberately flout the traditions in your small-minded mortal way, then you are going to pay the metaphoric piper for the same. But again, this is why I decided to make this video, because the critic's review goes out of its way to edit around and mock any time the movie gets down to brass tacks and goes, oh, by the way, in case you were curious about what we were doing, this is what we are doing. Mr. Perkins delivers the first half of it, and Rhonda handles the second half of it. But if you marry those two halves together, with also the scene with Halloween Scrooge flipping through channels, then you should, and also the part in the beginning where even the least informed lover of Halloween, the boyfriend character, even he is uncomfortable with and defends that the traditions are worthwhile and enjoyable for their own sake. Because that's the point of this movie. It's supposed to be something akin to a morality play, although morality in this case is somewhat loose, because, well, Halloween really isn't a moral holiday exactly. It's a irreverent, rebellious, supernaturally tinged holiday. But even so, it has rules. Those rules should be honored, and the movie will go out of its way to inform you of the hows and whys. And the thing is, and this is why I made this video. It's possible that Doug has watched Trick or Treat all these years since 2007 and not picked up on, oh, you mean the lore is supposed to be important. The lore is supposed to be what we as the audience side with. I.e., when Mr. Perkins says, nowadays no one really cares, that's at least partially something we as the audience are supposed to feel bad about too, but also partially supposed to be an indictment of anyone who does watch Trick or Treat and doesn't pick up on the, oh wait, the lore is important, maybe I should respect it. That's supposed to be the joke. I hate to burst your bubble, but this is the thing. How exactly did Doug and Rob Walker go through the decade plus of watching Trick or Treat every year and never pick up on, wait, you mean we as the audience aren't supposed to gloss over the anthropological ramble that Perkins or Rhonda give us? You mean that's basically the theme of the movie? The theme of the movie is the traditions are important. You should have at least a little bit of respect for them, and they go back to something older and more primordial than you'd be willing to think just based on the superficial commercial trappings of it? Yes, that is indeed what the point of the movie is. And there's even a reference to it in the review as well. When the critic gets to Rhonda's bit of the movie where she's explaining the backstory of Samhain, he even says something to the effect of, I must be getting old because I actually wanted to hear more about the history of Halloween. To which my response in the moment basically was, good for you, Doug. You finally rose to the level of where everyone else in the audience is at. If they're not there to begin with, because let's face it, the kind of people who will seek out a movie like Trick or Treat are the kinds of people who watch like History Channel documentaries on Halloween as a kid, or who like the actual lore behind Halloween and who don't see it as just a superficial commercial thing. Or, and this is the genius of Trick or Treat, if you come into it knowing the history of Halloween, knowing the Samhain and the Harvest Festival and the thinning of the veil and all of that business ahead of time, you will appreciate Trick or Treat for basically showing that kind of thing respect and or explicating in a fairy tale or morality play type fashion why everyone should at least be more respectful and more mindful of Halloween than they already are. Or if you come in as a normie, not knowing that stuff, you will be made, it will stay with you after you've left the movie. And I think, and again, this is why I felt the need to make this video, because it seems like the critic, or Doug Walker, and by extension the critic, have watched this movie so many times and never picked on never picked on the actual substance, never realized, oh wait, this is basically a modern fairy tale or a Halloween-based version of A Christmas Carol with, slight differences because Halloween and Christmas are different. And if he were actually looking for why this stays with people, which is the cut and thrust of the editorial segments of the review, it is possible, in fact, I would say very likely, that the fact that Trick or Treat is so specifically about Halloween, the phenomenon, not just Halloween, the superficial festival, but Halloween, the ethos, Halloween, the mechanic, because it is so focused on the lore and why the lore is important, or why the history of the holiday is in some sense even more important than the superficial stuff. That might be why it sticks with people so much. And I honestly thought that was where he was going when he opened up the review in that way, where he did talk about how Trick or Treat focuses specifically on the holiday instead of just basically pulling a Halloween Die Hard like every other Halloween movie prior to it. Um, with the possible exception of Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch, which is the only Halloween movie in the Halloween franchise that actually is about Halloween. But, yeah, you would think that putting two and two together, like I did, of, oh wait, this is a fairy tale, oh wait, this is the Halloween equivalent of A Christmas Carol, oh wait, we shouldn't just lampshade the historical and anthropological diatribes because they're the message or the moral of the movie. These traditions are older than you think. These traditions are more important than you think. These traditions have more weight to them than you think, and you probably should have at least a little bit of awareness and respect for them. And hey, doesn't that make Halloween more fun? Um, you would think that would be kind of where the critic ends, but no. He goes all the way through the movie, focusing only on how saturated in Halloween imagery the movie is, and doesn't ever pick up on, oh, hey, wait, the movie is telling me I need to be more respectful and pay more attention to Halloween as a thing in its own right, not just as a superficial festival. Um, and it kind of baffles me that one could watch Trick or Treat as many times as I assume Doug Walker has and not picked up on it. But yeah, I hate to burst your bubble, buddy, but maybe if you actually let the movie talk to you instead of just glazing over when they started on a long diatribe, you would know that the movie is smarter than you would think. It is much more than passable. And given that Michael Dougherty, the creator of Trick or Treat, also made it a habit to make a Christmas themed version of this with basically the same lesson of respect the lore, respect that which goes bump in the night, etc., and so on. And even in his Godzilla movie, he basically created an artificial ancient mythos or a primordial mythos for the kaiju. Remember how they were called Titans, or remember how in the X-Men movie that Michael Dougherty was involved with, he took Nightcrawler's established Christianity and turned it up to an 11 by throwing in him tattooing himself with Enochian sigils. Call me crazy, but I sort of think that Michael Dougherty might be a little bit of a lore nut, and the world is better off for it. But this is, I guess, the overall point. I think that Doug Walker and or the Nostalgia Critic doesn't understand Trick or Treat because he didn't seem to be in on what the movie was actually trying to say. And that is why he thinks that the movie is less intelligent than it otherwise is. Because he saw the movie um, going on historical and anthropological diatribes, and basically it was in one ear and out the other until apparently just now. Um, as opposed to, this is very obviously the movie telegraphing to you what indeed it is about. What is the underlying theme? The underlying theme, of course, being, as I said, I think a couple of years ago, the underlying theme of both Trick or Treat, Krampus, and even to some extent the Godzilla movie that Michael Dougherty made, could basically be summed up as respect the lore. That's why Sam is the embodiment of Halloween. Because unlike Christmas, which has both Santa Claus and, of course, obviously Krampus, as enforcers of the holiday spirit, Halloween doesn't really have one of those. The closest thing it has is Stingy Jack, who is more or less almost portrayed as a victim of Halloween rather than the master of it. And I guess yeah, they also have Jack Skellington in like Nightmare Before Christmas. But I think that's why Sam sticks with people so much. It's because apart from the story of Jack-o'-lantern or maybe Jack Skellington, Halloween doesn't have an icon character. It has an icon image, the image of the jack-o'-lantern. But as far as a master of Halloween, in the same way that Santa Claus is the master of Christmas, at least in the minds of most people who care about that sort of thing, Halloween doesn't really have one, so Michael Dougherty made one, and it resonated well enough that both Sam and the lore that Sam is sort of the enforcer of registers with people. Because again, it kind of does for Halloween what A Christmas Carol does for Christmas. These traditions are more important than you think. These traditions have more weight than you think. You might want to get a deeper enjoyment out of Halloween using them, or maybe, just maybe, you should show Halloween a little bit of respect. And I guess this is where I end my diatribe, because that really is the difference here. I watched Trick or Treat, and I immediately got kind of what it was doing. Sam is the embodiment of Halloween. He's literally called Sam Hain, which is the Anglicization or Englishization of Samhain. And he is the enforcer of the rules of Halloween, and anyone who is too short-sighted, too superficial, or too much of a killjoy to not be in on Halloween on some level, well, they will get themselves some good old-fashioned fairy tale justice in it, with a Halloween theme to it. But it seems like all of that, all of the anthropology, all of the lore bored or annoyed Doug Walker, and so he's been watching this movie so many times over the years without having it click that that's what the movie is trying to say. Rhonda and Mr. Perkins don't just haul off and ramble because they want to haul off and ramble, or because the director didn't know what they were doing. This is the director telling you, oh, by the way, in case you wondered, this is what this movie is about. It's about this lore and why you probably should show it at least a little bit more respect. Or, if you want to look at it this way, here's a movie that focuses on the lore. I hope some of it sticks with you. And it does. That's what makes Trick or Treat stick with people. That's what makes it more than passable. And that's what makes it smarter than you would think. Because here's a movie that takes the same facts, the same lore as your average History Channel documentary back before History Channel was more than just Pawn Stars, Ancient Aliens, and nothing the fuck else, and makes you actually care about it, makes you actually in on the joke, and makes you actually... It might even take you from the state of being a Halloween Scrooge or a girlfriend character type person, all the way to, okay, actually, yeah, there's more to Halloween than I thought. And, maybe, just maybe, Doug Walker played himself by basically being one of those audience members who doesn't actually engage with the movie, and that's why he thought it was less smart than it is. But, there are those of us who do respect the lore, and, yeah, that's sort of my whole shtick. So, I guess there's only one possible way I could end this video. This has been another of my videos, so in honor of the person it's a response video to, I will end it this way. I am Dalton Mortimer the Authenticator, and I remember it because respecting the lore is the entire goddamn point. Cheers, guys. Happy Halloween.